KMR. We're back home, California. We did the trip, Utah to California back. Round 7 of Formula Drift is wrapped up, and it was a wild round. We had some issues with the car. We're going to talk about that. The track changes weren't anything I really liked, so Formula Drift took basically one of the tracks that I loved and made it one of the tracks that I just didn't enjoy that much. So let's talk about it. We're going to do a little KMR Round 7 event recap. All right, so the car itself did great. I mean, for what we had, we only got about 8 laps of practice. You just don't get a lot of practice in Formula Drift, and we were having an issue making peak boost. So the combination of the altitude of Utah and the lack of boost, which is horsepower, made it a difficult event. And because you only really get about 8 laps of practice, maybe 12 if you're lucky, and we were not only trying to figure out why we weren't achieving peak boost, but we were also trying to make changes to the car so I could drive the car with that lack of boost. And before anybody even says it, the rotary engine is fine. It did great. The 3 rotors running fantastic. Great compression, great numbers, great vacuum. It's doing good. And the nitrous system was working fantastic. But what we had an issue with was peak boost. And we know it's not the turbo. We checked all of our wastegates, boost controllers working. And we did multiple boost leak tests and really came up empty-handed. And it was disappointing. We only had the available practice time to go out and test the car in between each practice run and then make changes. So it's a lot different than being at the shop, having the dyno, and really being able to dig into it. And I just got to say, the crew did fantastic. It's not easy to change the car setup, make the driver, me, happy, all the while trying to figure out why we're having a basic issue cause us problems. And I'm sure we're going to resolve it. I just unloaded the car, so we haven't even got into it yet back here in California. But we're going to get this thing on the dyno and basically go through it, try to figure out why we were having a boosting issue. Now, other issues that were happening out at Salt Lake City, where they changed the track. And this did a couple things. Not only were we having boost problems, so that made the car low on horsepower, which affected the ability of the settings from last year to perform properly. So our notes were no good. But we also had to deal with Formula Drift completely changing the initiation and probably knocking about 40 miles an hour off of that initiation run-up. And especially with a small displacement turbocharged car, that completely changed our gearing, completely changed our initiation style, and forced me to relearn a track. And I kind of think this is unfortunate. Utah last year was probably one of my favorite tracks. Now, granted, the car was working great, but it was 100+ mile an hour entry into this beautiful road racing switchbacks that were just fantastic. And by changing the entry, basically knocking the entry down to a slow entry and pushing the entry back so it's very visually distorting. Basically, we had to initiate and drift past what would be the inner apex of a road race circuit and then go over the outer rumble. So you felt like you were going off track every time you did this track right, because you really were. You were drifting the car right off what would be the road race track into the outer area that you're not even supposed to be on, and then come back across the track. And so it wasn't a smooth entry for the car. People were having tire debeat issues. Luckily, we never did. And the visual orientation was horrible. We literally couldn't see the edges of the track, and what normally would have been our inside reference for the track wasn't. We were supposed to ignore it. So just notes for Formula Drift, please give us good visuals. And normally I think following the arc of the track probably would have been better. I know they were trying to make the track better. I know they were trying to clear the smoke line basically for the chase drivers, but I don't know if the pros outweighed outweighed the cons in this particular instance. So for me, it was a struggle to adapt to the new track changes while the car wasn't performing perfectly. And then the third thing that happened, which was totally random, this is not something that normally happens, and I don't know, I'm going to mention it just because it did affect the event, but I also want to say that I'm very grateful for the partners' effort, and I know it was an abnormal thing, so no big deal. But basically our tires showed up late. By the time I got tires mounted and we were able to hit the circuit, practice had already started. So we lost a couple laps right at the beginning of our practice, and that only led to more laps having to be sacrificed to resetting and working on the car. So just overall, I feel very fortunate. I still view it as a great event because we did qualify. We have some decent results. We got one win, and we made it to the top 32. We had a great time with the crowd. Utah is always, a very, very fun crowd, very fun event. And so I still think it was a fantastic event, and we're very excited about Irwindale, even though it was probably one of the most difficult events of the year for the team, and the car completely looks it. I mean, we've gotten rubbed in the back, rubbed in the front, rubbed in the side, and then at the last round in Seattle, I basically rubbed the majority of the rear corner off. So we're going to do some serious work. Keep watching the channels, Instagram, YouTube. It's where we put a lot of the highlights. But basically, I'm hoping, in the next 10 days or so, we're going to get this on the dyno, resolve the boosting issue. We'll get a bunch of fresh tires. We love Vitor, probably my favorite tire that I've ever ran on in Formula Drift. So, I mean, hey, sometimes shipping just doesn't work out, but we had to wait because we love the tires, and we obviously wanted to be out there on the best tire possible. So had to wait for the right size, right tire to show up. And, all in all, we're just going to have some fun. We've got a little Formula Drift break right now. So it's perfect to do some maintenance and get ready for the last round of the season. So I think that's a wrap. That's a wrap. We've recapped it. Things that happened. I want to give a shout out, just appreciate all the partners that make it happen, Mazda Tricks, my crew. We've had a fun time this year, and I can't wait for basically the things that are coming. Like I kind of mentioned, maybe a little bit here over the channel recently, this guy right here is probably getting retired, and we've got something new in the works. So keep watching KMR.